LP.
They've got cheek to pick on my property. Oh, God, Lizzie. And you the lucky woman not to be here to see the whole place coming down in a shower of bricks and slates. Big drills they never had when we were girls. Ah, Lizzie, it'd make you weep to walk around Dublin now and see a wall standing and the very wallpaper there on it the way it was before the house was taken away. Or the mark of an old gas stove that cooked many a Saturday night meal. You'd hardly know the old parts of Dublin now since the devil era fellow got going, and he's advancing slowly but surely with his curse of God's slum policy. Get sure. Hello, Bran. Come over here to the bed and tell us how you got on at school today. I hear you're writing poetry and winning scholarships. God, wouldn't it be great if you could get to one of them colleges? Yeah. Oh, but you never mind. Them Christian brothers would never let a working man's child go on to better things, no matter how many examinations he passes. Isn't that right, Bran? Bran, are you not listening? Bran? Oh, he's gone. So maybe he wasn't here at all. Anyway, what would an old woman like me be doing with a child of 13? 13? He's writing poetry. The Princess one too. What was it called now? Frank brought me the Congress newspaper that had it inside. What was it called now? Red Envoy. That's it. Red Envoy. Why'd he call it that, I wonder? Ah, good boys, my Bran. Even if he does wipe me kiss off his cheek when he thinks I'm not looking. I sure he used to do the same with me own gran that lived above in Granville Street. Isn't that strange now? I haven't thought of her for years. And now, I see her as clear as day. The way she used to hoist up her petticoats to warm her arse at the big range. Oh, by God, she'll be warm enough now if she went to the place the grandfather suggested. Oh, God forgive him. And me too, for remembering. They're going to tear the whole place down. I say, they're going to take down the houses. You won't have to hunt the children away from the property now, messers. Or they're going to tear it all down. On top of us. On top of it.
When I was 9, a visit to Coles's Lane could only mean one thing. A new pair of boots, which Ma got cheap because they were second-hand. Are you buying, girl? Oh, there's a grand pair, ma'am. Lovely pair of hair-striped pants, worn only on the left leg because the man that left them off didn't have a right one. I could let you have them for half nothing. Ma dragged me along behind her from one stall to the other, shaking me wrist impatiently every time I lagged behind to look at something. And then she saw what she thought she was looking for. So she told me to take off my overcoat. Well, I knew then I wasn't getting a new pair of boots because no one has to take their coat off to get their feet sized up. One by one, she picked up the little gansies, and one by one, I took them off. And one by one, the facial expression of the stall holder changed, so that at the end, she wasn't even patting me on the head. At long last, Ma got what was just right. A new brown pullover with a V-neck, a nearly new pair of pants, and a clean white shirt.
And all the ones that could be taken and never be missed.
Our carriage was packed with people. And as we wagged back and forth and from side to side, it wasn't hard to envy Granny up there in front. And her with the whole carriage to herself.
It's a good time, young.
She was nearly 90.
You know, the ways of the Almighty is most unusual to behold.
It wasn't a kick in the arse off 90.
But there's that old labour exchange manager. It'd be an act of Christian charity if someone's to put him out of his pain. But he's the most miserable man. But your mother, a decent woman.
I'm telling you, Giggins, if she was any nearer 90, she'd have been 100.
I dare say you're right there, Frank. She'd a good innings. All the same, I doubt if the likes of us will ever see the half of her age.
Not if we live to be 1,000. The old folk were as strong as oxes.
We'll all go sometime. Ah, well.
When the Great Reaper comes, it'll be time for us to go.
I'd never been to a funeral before, and I was enjoying every minute of it. Nor could I understand why I was not invited to Mrs. McHugh's. Brendan was there, and I heard he'd actually been given drink and was allowed to sing. But when I cried, Dad said I could come the next time Mrs. McHugh died.
Sad to think she'll never pass this way again.
The sadness is with them that's left behind.
We won't be long following after her if the government has its way. But here there's a new move on to cut the dowel.
No.
I got tipped off by a fellow that's been on it since Lloyd George's time.
Suits them better to give work to the people.
Ah, no, I think the government is doing a fair old job. I mean, look at the number of people employed on clearing the slums. In a little while, there won't be a tenement house standing.
What's going to happen to the poor people then, may I ask?
Oh, there's new homes being built for them. Fine houses. I've worked on them. So is Giggles there.
I don't mean to agree we're all to move out to the country, Sean. Besides, Sailor says that they have the lavatories inside the houses. Isn't that right, Sailor?
But that's right. Most unhealthy. In a few years' time, the whole population will be wiped out by typhoid.
Oh, diphtheria. Oh, diphtheria. Ah, nonsense. I've worked in dozens of real houses, and the lavatories are always on the inside. I mean, surely it's more hygienic than a pot or a bucket.
They might have something there. I dare say it is more like, whatever you call it, than a pot or a bucket. Especially them that leaks.
And I thought the most stupidest ideas. Sure, can't you empty a pot or a bucket, but not a whole lavatory? Sure, isn't that why we leave down things out in the yard so the fresh air can kill the germs if anything goes wrong?
Of course, that's another way of looking at it.
There's nobody going to tell me that it's not a brutal act to exile the people from their native land.
But it's only 4 miles.
A good spit.
Well, I for one would be sorry to leave, as it was a fine, neighbourly place to live.
Especially since the rent went down to nothing. And God knows it couldn't be much cheaper than that.
When we reached the top of the North Circular, Da pointed to Mountjoy Prison and said...
Man, that's Governor of Mountjoy Prison there, served 10 years himself. As a Republican prisoner in Dartmoor.
Hold your turden gamekeeper, eh?
I know, but like, isn't it unusual to find a prisoner turning governor?
I think it only proves that the government has no interest in prisoners that serve their time to the trade in Ireland. I mean, there must be plenty of qualified men. That's been in jail at home, but they've got a dart more to look for them, no.
Yeah, that's true for you, ma'am. Sure, that's my brother Johnny. And I suppose he could have produced glowing testimonials from any prison in Ireland.
Ah.
If only he had known the job was open. But I suppose it went to a bog, man.
We turned around Doyles's corner and onto the north end of Fisborough Road. And Mr. Clancy, seemingly worried, remarked,
I hope to God the horse driver is not one of these pledge pin merchants.
God, if he is, he'll be the first one I ever volleyed.
Cab stammered to a halt, just around the corner from Doyle's wine and spirit merchants.
God.
Say, miss, the assistant staff leader was themselves was in the hay.
It's an old custom to go for a wet, whether it's the baby's head, the marriage knot, or the last gallop to the blue beyond. Will you and Kathleen be staying behind?
Oh, I don't think we bother, Sarah. Just bring us back a couple of baby powers.
Not for me, Mr. Clancy.
I think I better go, Kathleen. You know, just to keep an eye on him. God knows he might never come back if there wasn't someone to remind him that he's a very important woman away.
I looked longingly after the departing mourners, but Ma's grip on me hand was voice-like, and her face had the appeal of Kilkenny marble. They were away for what seemed like ages, and then, at long last, I could hear Da's hearty laugh.
Carrying brown paper parcels under their arms. That's Ma's laughing at something.
On Judgment Day, you're the only one unable to stand.
Gorgeous to see him under fighter.
That's a good boy. Now, look your mommy's
Over the starboard there, sailor.
That's a good one, Tiggy.
Stephen, mind the wooden leg.
Heaven will be well pleased. Hey, right, what was that all about? I missed the hammer on the way to the jacks.
What was that?
Charlie Doyle was telling us about a crowd that came last week and lost the bloody car.
Not the very go. Where did he manage that?
They're in too much trouble, it seems. The horses decided to go back to the stable, but they were all inside having a wet.
Everybody gone.
Open again.
That's your fault, Frank.
It was my fault, kids.
We're at the very end of the cortege.
So what? We get there. If my mother can manage it and her dad, I don't see why we shouldn't.
We're next to kin.
Well, now, you're not going to start talking about people's rightful places at funerals, surely.
We should be right behind the hares. It's a matter of protocol.
The only important protocol to remember at funerals is not to be right up in the very front.
A good point, Frank. Well taken.
God, if I was to miss the Sodden as such a great old friend and neighbour, I'd cut me throat.
You must have missed a drink.
Are things not bad with you then, Giggles? I mean, didn't you have a date with that brother of yours? The one that's in the civil service?
Brother of mine, is it? That half-priest is no blood relation of mine. You know what he says to me when I asked him for a couple of shillings?
No.
I knocked on the door, and when I hadn't been answered after half an hour, I went away. The following morning when I come back, do you know what he says to me?
No.
We knew who it was, but we didn't come down because we were resting before midnight mass. Now I ask you, let's fine carry on for a blood relation.
The Cross Guns Tavern came into sight, and Dad said,
Won't be long now.
A lap of honour up Cemetery Road, and it's all over bar the show.
Thank God we got here safely.
No thanks to the bloody jockey up in front.
Aye, since we come out of Dials, I had the idea that Steve Donahue was in charge of the horse.
There you go.
one by one, the black mirrored coaches drew to a stop, and the mourners piled out. The men, their hats behind their backs, and the women had their rosary beads wound round their fingers in front. Brendan, Rory and Sean were up the front with Uncle Paddy. It was quite clear that Brendan was really sorry to be losing her. Oh, it was all right for Rory and Sean. They still had their granny furlong to fall back on. But when you were like the Behans, down to your last granny, death was no laughing matter. The priest was round one side of the open hole, his right arm waving to and fro, while his left hand held a prayer book from which he muttered the stock excuses for deceased persons. He prayed to God to go easy on Granny and make sure everything was okay for her. Brian wondered, how would Granny feel if she didn't quite make it to the top and had to spend a few years in purgatory? But Seamus said, if there was any way of getting into the 7 and 6 part, Granny'd find it. Anyway, wouldn't Lizzie McHugh be well in front of her? Be able to put in a word for in someone's ear. 3 lumps of clay. The diggers were ready. Grave filled up very quickly. I grew up very slowly before I was 5, then a bit quicker. So that by the time I was 7, well, things were beginning to have a meaning for me different from what they ever had before. I knew now why Ma was a bit shocked when she came into the hall and found me and Delita Redding lying belly to belly. And I also knew why she objected to me repeating the limerick.
Lady, God bless her, threw her leg over the dresser. The dresser was sticky and stuck to her Ricky.
Dominic Behan! Inside this instance, now stop singing those dirty songs.
And then there was bad language. You shouldn't say bloody. Damn was even worse. But it was a terrible sin altogether to shout, Jesus!
A man's ambition must be small. To write his name in a shithouse small.
For a long time now, I've been thinking of writing poetry. Ever since Brendan's poem was in unpublished, in fact. And if you'd seen the way our neighbours used to look at him after that, you'd know too how deeply I envied him.
At the age of 3, Sister Monica, he could read the whole of Robert Emmett's speech from the dock, the whole blessed thing.
That boy will be great. Great.
Brendan. Brendan for breakfast, for dinner, and for tea. And of course, the worst thing of all was there was absolutely nothing in the chap to make a person dislike him. Whatever he did, I imitated. Whatever he read, I read. Whatever he sang or thought worth singing, I learned. Having decided to write poetry, I entered one from a book by Shelley that was on our dresser at home in a school competition. But Sister Rita recognised it at once and said so. Isn't it amazing how nuns find things out? I'd swear that book never left our house. I must admit also, Brendan had a great deal of influence on my political turn of thought. So, everything I touched had an Irish Islander slant.
When I grow up, to God I pray, let me join the IRA.
In song and verse, I sang the praises of my native land. But when the time came for me to leave Ireland's shores, I was far too overcome to think an anthem but stilted prose of the barren wastes of Kimmage. For a new menace had entered the life of Russell Street, threatening the existence of the entire community. He rode a bicycle, wore glasses, had a trench coat, and was known as the Sanitary Man, a name synonymous with pimp, hunts, and prostitute bannerman. Because the tenant mentions had a terrible aversion to moving into better houses, the Dublin Corporation had to adopt a get-tough policy with the slums. And the Sanitary Man epitomised for the dwellers all that they mistrusted in the great rehousing programme. Today, the Sanitary Man was coming to supervise the eviction of Mrs. Clancy. She wasn't a bit surprised. For on Monday, she'd received a letter bearing the Three Castles emblem telling her that this was her third and final notice to quit the 2 rooms she occupied at Russell Street. Men in blue overalls would come as soon as they'd finished their 10 o'clock tea and shift all of our furniture down into the hall. And on the morrow, other men would come and tear her little room to pieces, so that even if she did want to come back, she'd have nowhere to hide. Because her husband was away at sea, Giggles had risen very early that morning, signed on at the Labour Exchange as soon as it opened, and even before the corporation workers were ready to start, had moved most of our little bits and pieces down into the hall.
Well, here's the first today.
God knows you need it.
Well, it was worth fighting for our country, even if it was only to protect the James's Gate Brewery.
Don't talk to me about independence, Giggles the boy. A lot of freedom we see now, and they're even taking us from our homes and flinging us into the wilds. Why can't they leave us be? Surely there's not much to ask.
It's true for you, ma'am. Even the British wouldn't have thought of doing things like that. In all their years here, they never put people out of their good old homes into dirty old faraway new housing schemes. Not once. Not to my knowledge, anyway. Oh, begob, the posse is on its way, ma'am. Sheriff and all. And judging by the sizes of their boots, I think they're going to have the company of 2 deputy marshals from Fitzgibbon Street Police Station.
Mother, the divine God. Oh, my God, is there?
Ah, now, Mrs. Clancy, there's no point in thinking upon things which cannot be otherwise. Take my advice and accept the hour that's in it. Forget about it tomorrow and let all your bad luck go with it.
If only Sailor was home from the sea.
You seem cold, ma'am. I light a fire.
There's no coal.
Well, there's plenty of banisters. And if they're thinking of putting the place down, I might as well give them a hand.
Mrs. Redden cooked a meal for Mrs. Clancy, for they were all in the same boat now, or soon would be. And later on, Giggles and Da went up and stole all the lead and brass fittings. So as Mrs. Clancy'd have a few bob to pay for our removal to Siberia.
Removing is right. I've had this feeling all day that there's a funeral we're attending.
Sean Cardle came up to see if he could lend a hand. So did Mr. Redden and Mrs. Kenny. And very soon, Mrs. Clancy's empty room was filled with folk who sat for the most part silent, or spoke in whisper, hushed tones. This was a wake, where the people were actually sitting inside the corpse. They didn't like it much. Dad tossed a couple of half-crowns to Giggles and he said,
Get someone to match that and bring back a drink from the pub.
In a moment, there was more than £3 in notes and silver heaped into Giggles' hand. He spent it all on drink. Couldn't bring himself to take as much as a halfpenny on such a sad occasion. No jokes were told, and no one was encouraged to laugh. Absent-mindedly, Mrs. Kenny started her party piece, Where the Angels Took You, Mammy. Oh, but Mrs. Redden soon quietened her by asking her if she'd no respect for the evening that was in it.
If yous were men at all, yous would fight the corporation and stay here in spite of them. And if the Gurkeg Nolan or Naggin Bottle Quinn was here these times, not one of them bailiffs bastards would best the natives out of Russell Street. No, nor a regiment of them.
Now you're talking. Or even Box the Fox Conroy.
Shut up, Crook.
Don't call me Crook. And what about the Ragman Jackson?
The Ragman Jackson was overrated.
Oh, for races. A man that could beat 4 Polishmen without sweating, and you call him overrated? Because it's a lot you know about the great men that lived in Russell Street. Tell him, Frank, for God's sake, tell him a little bit about his Irish history.
A lot of Irish history is done for us. It's the same Irish history is responsible for the way we be treated this very minute. And after all, the men that died for it, here we are being treated like strangers in our own homes. God, if any of my children supports the Irish history people, I'd cut their legs off.
I saw the ragman one time, and he made a bet with a man I know that if he couldn't bake the best man in Mooney's in College Street with one hand strapped behind his back, he'd leave the country there and then.
And what happened? Did he kill him? I bet he killed him.
Well, the place was packed with big, hairy footballers. Not one of them under 18 stone.
And all looking for a row.
The ragman called for a drink at the bar, downed a full glass of malt at the one go, turned the glass upside down on the counter, and roared for the best man in the house.
Yeah, go on, go on.
There was a terrible silence for a while.
What happens?
This mountain of a man walked slowly up to the bar.
And what did the ragman do, Frank?
Well, you're the best man in the house, said the mountain. What would you be after making of it? And the ragman took his right hand out of his pocket, stretched it across the mountain's shoulders and said, let you and me
Fight to it, then.
Yeah. Well, time I was getting home to Kathleen. Night to you, ma'am.
As the last of the neighbours were departing, Giggles sat by the fire to await with Mrs. Clancy the arrival of her husband. There was no sound in the house, save Mrs. Redden's clock from the bottom front, striking 3. They were all in the same boat now. The executioner's hand had risen, and when it fell, Russell Street would be of the past. Sorrow was only felt by a person nearest the cause, and the night watchmen wasted no sentiment as they sat out the long hours, guarding the drills, hammers, pickaxes, shovels, and all the other weapons with which progress destroys a way of life.
Every man when I go home, the boys won't leave the girls alone. They won't be here as we come, but that's all right till I go home. She is handsome, she is pretty, she is the belle of Dublin City. She has lovers 1, 2, 3. Pray now tell me who they be. She is handsome, she is pretty, she is the belle of Dublin City. She has lovers 1, 2, 3. Pray now tell me who they be.
Born into idleness had made his day, but it sent Mr. Martin home in a state of nervous shock. Round and round in his mind he rolled the incident, until he had it edited to his complete satisfaction.
Well, now, lads, God never opens one door, but he closes half a dozen, and that's no lie. Guess who I'm working for now? Cyril Bloody Martin. Cyril Bloody Martin, he should be called. Oh, but he really loves the Lord. His whole life is one long genuflection to a dress coat, and so full of the little tricks of a bloody lover over the upper classes he is, with this mind the lady's carpet being. Or The new rich is not like the ones in my day, with fine carriages and a house full of servants. Much too common. Even refer to their skippies in familiar terms. Oh no, in my day, the real rich, them that was proper gentry, would have looked at a servant that didn't curtsy when her ladyship passed by. And it's the back of a hand she would have got from any gentleman that was used to money. Well, he was ladying and ladying out of him all the week, without realising that her ladyship was a decent girl who sprung from the ranks of stall holders in Moore Street and was as sick of his fawn and slavesmanship as I was myself. But matters came to a head this morning when her ladyship came downstairs suffering from a sick head, which wasn't helped any by the ugly fumes of Cyril's paraffin oil paint. Well, the poor woman barely had time to down her first ball of malt when he started. Does your ladyship mind if I smoke? She gave him a look that would split rocks, and in the finest rain tone she said, "With all due respect, Mr. Martin, her ladyship doesn't give a shite if you burst into flames."
He wondered if maybe he should substitute another ward for some members of the company. But having tried possible alternatives, he decided that such a move would ruin his story. Meanwhile, in the Grafton Bar, his brother-in-law, Pater Carney, was holding forth to Tom Pugh and Farrelly, the publican.
And there was that dirty little excuse for a human being.
The Lord Mayor of Dublin, mind you.
Mansion houses don't care what sort of creature occupies them nowadays. And as for mayoral chains...
Are you taking our Alfie's name in vain?
There you are, Frank.
Evening, Tom.
Will you try a ball of malt?
Well, indeed, I knew a fella that had two and it didn't do him any harm. Put a point with that, will you?
Hey, wait a minute, Rothschild. That's my slate you're fiddling with there.
I should have broken that slate years ago.
Because, no. You can break it this minute for all I care.
Misters, will you get off controversial matters and back to Alfie Byrne, for God's sake?
Yes, well, anyway. There was this Cobb Bogue, and him telling an audience at the Five Lamps, "I've stood for North Dublin, and every time I did, the good people of the constituency have elected me by a never-increasing margin." She was gone. I couldn't believe my ears. And the crowd of yahoos cheering him like mad.
Didn't he make his money stealing from drunks?
Oh, no, that's going a bit far, Tom.
Oh, that's true enough. Used to water whiskey 20 to the dozen when he knew a man had a drop taken. And as for pints of stout, there should have been a law against the collar he made them wear.
Yeah, well, look at anyway, taking me life in me hands. I looked up at him and I asked, "And Mr. Byrne," says I, "would you mind answering the question?" "Indeed, young man," says he. He'd call you anything for a boat, what? "Indeed, young man," says he, "I do not." But you don't do too badly at the collar game yourself, Sean. God almighty, man, you can put a tie on that.
Just about as high as your bell, Father, and has about as much chance of going down.
Ah, that's a fair-looking point, right enough.
Anyway, look, I says to little Alfie, "Mr. Byrne," says I, "have you any recollection of standing against a Republican candidate in the North Docks division of Dublin during the election of 1918? Well, I'll tell you this and I'll tell you no more. He turned back to his old conservative blue. In the face, I mean.
What was his reply, Father?
Reply? I suppose he was speechless.
Aye, that was about the size of it. "Mr. Byrne," says I, "you are beating Hollaby, a man that didn't even campaign, because at that time, the man was still in jail." You remember who that was, Sean?
Oh, will I ever forget? Phil Shanahan was that man, and I was his foreman in those times. Phil it was who gave me my start here.
I'm surprised you didn't get a kick in the face from them animals that follow us.
You're damn right there, Frank. By the way, Frank, isn't it time you get your hand a little nearer your trouser pocket before the dry season sets in, huh?
Yeah, put them up there, Sean. I didn't want to interrupt the flow of your narrative.
Worry about nothing but the flow of drink, Frank. Very few stories are worth as much as a ball of malt.
Well, I'll cross swords with you there, Father. It should see Cyril Martin's face this morning when this out was...
There's a character in Mr. Joyce's new novel, a lecherous publican that gets up to some strange goings-on in Phoenix Park. And I'd love to ask Mr. Joyce if he had Alfie Byrne in mind when he was thinking of the chap.
Oh, I didn't know that Joyce had a new book published.
Oh, well, it hadn't a title when I read extracts from it. Work in progress, he calls it. But this character, Humphrey Chimpton Earwicker, is the spitting image of Alfie Byrne, right down to Alfie's habit of going a step of the road with everybody. And sure, HCE stands for Here Comes Everybody.
It's not exactly the same as our city.
Oh, excuse me, Frank. Tell us, Tom, how is it that you and Joyce get on so well together, huh? From what I've heard, he never had a bone to throw to a dog.
Ah, it's the eyes, don't you know? In the land of the literally blind, the one-eyed man is Chief Buckcat.
Oh, you're speaking in riddles, man.
Well, for years I noticed him giving me a smile whenever our paths crossed, when he was on the way to the university for study, or when himself and Gogarty would be on the razzle-dazzle around Monto.
Yes, but the eye, Tom, how does the eye enter into it?
The bloody deaf I'd be worried about.
Well, I didn't know myself until somewhere around 1930. Joyce heard I loved Ulysses, and he also was surprised to hear that I could talk about Dublin as knowledgeably as himself.
I hope he had a bloody audience that listened.
So, one day he said to me, "What year were you born, Mr. Pugh?" And I told him, 1883. Well, he beamed with delight. We have much in common, both being born the same year. And we've been friends ever since.
You know, I heard from James Stevens that he was also a great believer in the value of coincidence. You know, according to Stevens, Joyce's good opinion of his work derives from the fact that they share the same birthday and year. So you're in good company.
Actually, even coincidence he'd stretch. I found out later that Joyce wasn't born in 1883, the year before, not my year at all. I suppose friendship is worth 12 calendar months.
Yeah, well, you know, if he ever comes back here, there's some we know would say 12 calendar months was too bloody good for him. Well, Frank, what was that story you were going to tell us, huh?
Well, that was it,
Excuse me, Father. There's a fellow around the corner trying to get your attention.
My attention? Because the only people wanted to talk to me at the moment are bailiffs and debt collectors. Oh, no, I never saw the man before in my life.
Well, maybe it's Frankie's after, huh?
That can't be me. I don't go in for that sort of thing. Oh, mother of blessings, I'm ruined. That fella used to be a neighbour before he moved out to Kimmage. One of the reasons I intend to stay in Russell Street. Ah, the hard sailor. Come and join us.
Delighted, Frank. Just give me a chance to finish my point.
Well, of all the bloody hypocrites, I thought you didn't want them near you.
Well, neither do I, but I can hardly fall down a hole. Anyway, manners is only a matter of consideration for people.
The Irish name for hypocrisy, what?
Well, when you keep your voices down, you don't want the poor devil to hear you. Come in, sailor. Take a seat there. Ah, the hard devil man. You know the company. This is Tom Pugh.
Pleased to meet you, Mr. Pugh.
And this is Kathleen's brother, Paddy Kearney.
Not the Paddy Kearney. Not the man that wrote the national anthem. Well, little did I think when I stepped off the boat after me journey on the stormy yacht.
Oh, you've come from abroad, Mr. Clancy.
I have, Mr. Pugh, all the way to the Isle of Man and back. But little did I think of the great thing that was in store for me. Oh, by God, this is no time for points of playing. Balls and marks, gents, balls and marks all round. I'll sing you a song, a soldier's song.
No, there's no need, Mr. Clancy. You're a guest, as it were. Besides, it's my show.
Trying it on the sailor. Did you ever hit the look at that, Frank? I just know me, Tutty.
I think you should take it easy, sailor.
Easy. Take it easy. After all me trying on the road and ocean, and he asked me to take it easy. Ah, by God, that's the mark of a landlubber, Frank. No offence and sense.
I'm none taken out, son.
It's not often, sir, that I get a chance to buy a wet for a man like you. There's after writing such a bloody fine song. And a bloody grand tune, too, if you don't mind me saying so.
Oh, not at all, Mr. Clancy. But I didn't write the tune, just the words.
Ah, she won't matter. A bird never flew on one wing. And what's the use of an old tune if you hadn't the words to go with it? Oh, by God, you've been a queer old state. If a fella started to perform on a paper and comb every time you wanted them to sing a song. Have you me drift, Frank? Ah, you believe me, Frank. Up there for savvy, down there for football. And a song without words, it'd be only bloody monologues.
Well, that was one way of looking at it, said someone in the company. But didn't Mr. Clancy think that the company might be on its ear if balls of malt, large balls of malt, kept coming its way until closing time? Had Mr. C been home yet? Would his wife maybe be sitting worrying?
Oh, worry. Ah, that's the rock that Samson perished on when he took Delilah for nothing than a barber. Now, I'm not a big little man that runs home to a big roaring wife. What was she when I married her? Answer me that. You that knows me, Frank. What was she when I took her in holy wedlock down to the altar in William Street Chapel one fateful day in the year 1914?
I didn't know her before you were married, sailor.
Well, be Jesus, you must be the only man in North Dublin that didn't. Who worry about you? Ah, that'll be the day. But I have the cure for the worst of them. Tonight, when I go home in the early hours of the morning, I'll ask for me dinner.
Breakfast, surely, Mr. Clancy.
Oh, well, if you're in the habit of eating cuttle for your breakfast, Mr. Pugh. But if my dinner's not ready, I'll break up the kitchen. Naturally enough.
Naturally enough.
And I mean, that dinner is ready, or refuse to take it. Naturally enough. Oh, because I'll show her. I'll sing you a song, a soldier's song with round your rose and call.
Your friend's a bit under the weather. I think you ought to encourage him to go home.
Well, I'll see what I can do. Right, no. I think you ought to be making your way back to Kimmage, sailor, before you down any more of those balls of malt.
Kimmage? Me? Oh, I patched up that lark a week ago. Have you any idea the cold out there? My God, even Napoleon couldn't fight against a climate like that. And the gang that's going out there.
Are they bad?
Bad. Bad is it. She knows I'm going to tell you. If any of that crowd pays their rent for 2 weeks running, the police is out wanting to know where they got it. Oh, that's only the half of it.
That's so.
The tip of the iceberg. Then there's the idolaters.
Idolaters, Mr. Clancy?
That's right. A fancy name for fancy men that sleeps with other men's wives. Oh, I have to be sharing that lot.
No.
I don't know the half of it. 2 days after we went out there, I took the missus to task over the fella next door, sending her signals on the lavatory chain. And do you know the lame excuse that she gave me?
No.
She said, maybe he was flushing his barrel. Now I ask you, is there any green in that right? But I didn't condemn her outright. Naturally, I gave her a fair hug.
Naturally enough.
Because, gents, I'm not that kind of man, am I, Frank? Ask him. Ask him straight out. Ask him if I'm a lawyer. Knows me for years. Knows me for years, he said. Look, would I or would I not give my little woman that is took for better than worse a fair hunt, Frank Behan?
Oh, indeed you would, sailor.
So I said nothing more about the matter, except that I did give her a natural tap on the face. Then I went to work, came back from Liverpool at 2 o'clock in the morning of the night after, crept quietly into bed without putting on the light.
Didn't want to disturb her, huh?
Then I did what a man ought to do. And when I was finished, I jumped up and I gave her an unmerciful clip.
You what?
I knew it, she said. You were thinking of the fella next door, wouldn't you? So how the hell would she know it was me? And it pitched dark. Aye, that brother-in-law of yours is a bit odd, isn't he, Frank, huh? You see the big ha-ha he gave out him rushing out to the kindness. Ah, well, I suppose all brainy men are a bit quiet in the head with all that thinking and reading all them big thick books with the heavy covers on.
I don't know, Mr. Clancy. Maybe he couldn't help it. I near did the same thing myself.
You did? Oh, because I'd watched that if I was you. I had a brother once when... oh, here's Mr. K coming back. Now, we won't let on that there's something out about him. There's no cause for embarrassment. Ah, thank you, Mr. K. You know, that's the one place we all have to go to some or another. But that's how the publican makes his money. You buy it here, and you pour it out down there. Oh, well, we'll leave you to it. Oh, sing you a song
How in the name of God, Frank, did you ever stick a lifetime with the likes of that, huh?
Isn't that how I've no intention of moving out to Kimmage? But wait, I was going to tell you about...
son, and not here. I want to be out of here before Sinbad gets back. Listen, myself and Tom will stroll over to Davies, and you can follow on when you get rid of the Mariner, huh?
You're not going to leave me here with them, are you?
Sure, you're used to it, Frank. See you tomorrow, Sean.
If I didn't own this bloody place, I'd be around in Davy Burdens myself.
Publicans are like popes, Sean. They never leave the Vatican.
Does your ladyship mind if I smoke? With all due respect, Mr. Martin, her ladyship doesn't give a shite if you burst into flames.
Hey, Frank. Your Captain Boyle's a fair time of the jacks. Do you think he's okay?
Cheers, he might have fallen down the pan. I better go and see. You never know how a drunk can fall.
But when Frank reached the spot where Mr. Clancy should have been, all that was left of the seaman was a heap of badly digested food floating on a pool of stale alcohol. Mr. Clancy must have left by the side door because sailors don't like to be sick in company. With great difficulty, Frank had made unsteady progress from the tram stop in Frederick Street to the railings of Mountjoy Square. And now, as he approached Fitzgibbon Street, he paused in an effort to regain control of his lower lip. A handcart passed, laden heavily with scraps of furniture of a Kimmage-bound family.
Poor unfortunate bastards. Don't know what they're letting themselves in for.
He hadn't meant to stay so long in Davy Bourne's. No, he'd have to face Kathleen's well-rehearsed silences.
Only she'd say something and not give me them continual bloody silences. Only she could be like the women of other men. But no. You didn't say ruined. Not another word. I'll say nothing. I'll just go to bed. No. Then she say I was too drunk to eat. God, the price a man has to pay for working late. Only a few short steps to go before you see the whites of her eyes. Remember your namesake, Stephen. Oh, God-forsaken God, I'm going to be martyred for far less. Might well be home for the sheep as a lamb. Still, better tell her where I'm going. Kathleen! Hey, Kathleen! I'm only going over to Gil's for a bit of tobacco. Glory be to God, there isn't any light or sign of life down there. Kathleen, are you listening to me? Surely to God, they can't be all in bed at this hour.
He clutched the side wall of the staircase, now unprotected since Giggles had removed the banisters in the interest of Mrs. Clancy's eviction warmth. And with difficulty and swearing, he reached his own door and he tried to open it.
Where the bloody hell is the door? Now, surely to God, they haven't taken the one thing a man has to complete his wall. Oh, Jesus Christ! Face to put a thing like that. Kathleen! Can you hear me? You kids! Funny, I never heard that echo before. What the hell was I drinking tonight? What? Where's all the furniture, huh? Am I in the right house at all? Bloody big hole where that dresser should be. Someone ought to mend that. Someone on the stairs. Mrs. Redden, is that you, ma'am? Have you seen any sign of Kathleen and the kids? Gone to Kimmage? Oh, go to God. Who's that?
It's only me, neighbour. Come to give you a bit of light.
Jesus, Giggles, you put the heart wet sideways in.
You're not in trouble, Frank, are you?
I'd say I'm in trouble. With all my family gone to Siberia.
I heard that, Frank.
Oh, you did you? Everyone heard it but me.
You mean They moved without you knowing.
Do you think I come all the way back to Russell Street if I known me family was gone to Kimmage?
Here, hold on there, Frank, now, I'll show you some light. Sympathy, Frank. You're in need of everyone's sympathy.
If you ask me, he's more in need of a map and compass.
To which remark they took exception, seeing the sad time that was in it. The people knew how Da felt, and they tried to keep his heart up with stories of people who had done well out there in Kimmage.
And listen, Mr. Behan, if you take my advice, you'll have everybody sleep in the one room for a while, till you get used to the idea of owning the top as well as the bottom of the house.
Sound sense, ma'am, sound sense. Of course, you'll own the whole bloody place now, and that can present problems. I heard that one fella was using the back door for years because he thought there was someone living above him.
You're a natural mistake for anybody to make.
It's sad to think we'll never hear Mrs. Behan's voice again, and her singing out her patriotic songs while doing her washing in front of the window. Whether she was up or down, Mrs. Behan always had a bar for the company. Always singing, always gay.
I'm sure half the time she'd her own share of worries, Giggles. But she never troubled anyone else with them. God rest her soul.
She isn't dead, Mrs. Kenny. She's only gone to Kimmage.
She's lucky she's not, Mr. Behan. I hear in that country they ain't, they're dead.
Sure, I heard that one fella had to ride shotgun on a hearse to get it safely to the cemetery.
Mr. Gill gave the neighbours a drink on the house, and everyone thought it was a change before death.
On the house, lads.
And Mr. Gill remembered Frank's kids as being a civil class of a family.
Except for the youngest fella, Dominic Behan. I'm going to tell you that fella must have been born to scourge saints. He used to come to that door, prance up and down, making faces at me. By the time I was round the counter to the front, he's behind me at the back. Still, he doesn't deserve bloody exile.
They always remember the children singing and reading books from the library at Charlemont Mall. Of course, there's them as didn't agree that the kind of books folks found lying around in Mrs. Behan's house was fit reading for children. But I always say, live and let live makes good neighbours better.
Live and let live. You know, Giggles, there's a heap of sense in some of the things you do come out with sometimes. And after all, Mr. Devoy, there's clergymen paid to do work the like of what some people we know takes upon themselves.
Only giving honour, ma'am, where honour is due. And to hell with the begrudgers.
Of course, we won't say anything about the fella, whose name I wouldn't dream of mentioning, who, when he saw Mrs. Caddle's ass with that pile of furniture waving and wagging on his head, the Behans are throwing in the sponge.
We'll leave that calumniator, Mrs. Kenny, to God. But you know what I'm going to tell you, Frank? It's not a word of a lie. It's a great pleasure to be able to call myself a friend of such a brave family that's prepared to do or die upon the lonesome trail, that the new world may be safe for others.
There's stock for your Giggles. Mr. Behan stock, pioneering in the wastelands.
It's a privilege to have known you, Frank. Shake. Put it there, me old Segotia. Shake.
Where did you get that husband? Where did you get that child? Isn't it a lovely one, just the proper style? I should love to have one, the very same as that. Wherever I go, they shout to know, where did you get that hat?
Frank was just about to tell the story of the lady and the boss when Mr. Gill said maybe it was time he was making tracks for the last tram to Dolphin's Barn, which was the nearest point to his new country. And he handed Da a slip of paper on which was written in Ma's hand, 70 Kildare Road, Kimmage, together with a baby pair for each pocket in case he should be overcome with a
On your way.
Will I owe you anything?
No, it's on the house. You're welcome. All right. There's a long, long trail I'm winding till the land of my dreams.
Right on till the end of the road. Keep right on till the end.
Goodbye, neighbours, and thanks for everything.
You're welcome, Frank. Take care now.
Boy, neighbour. Don't forget to write.
me ma when I go home, the boys won't leave the girls alone. They pull me hair and toss me comb, but that's all right till I go home.
She is handsome, she is pretty, she is the belle of Dublin City. She has lovers, 1, 2, 3, pray now tell me who they be. She is handsome, she is pretty, she is the belle of Dublin City. She has lovers, 1, 2, 3, pray now tell me who they be.
Because architects did not believe that even bloody walkers can appreciate beauty. The first houses that went up at Kimmage were badly designed. The second houses were also bad designed, as were the third and fourth. 30 tiny feet high, the 2 stories comprised of bathroom, lavatory, 2 bedrooms on top, kitchen underneath, and another room. There was a garden at the front and back, and rumour had it that if you spread out the ground and laid what were known as lawn seeds, bits of hay that horses didn't eat, around, you'd get grass. Well, Frank discovered that if you left it alone, you get weeds as well, which was a very interesting discovery for a man who'd never studied the land question. Didn't take that long to settle down to the idea of living Kimmage, and after some little time he got quite used to the idea of staying in town as long as possible. But when he was at home, there was always the role of the man of the house to be performed.
You don't put nails in a picture rail, woman. You use a hook.
I haven't got a hook.
Well, if you continue using the hammer like that, you'll bang your thumb.
I may very well do because I'm not very good at this sort of thing.
Well, do the best you can, woman, and I'll tell you when you have it straight.
Here, Da! Da!
The child is talking to you, Frank.
What is it, son?
There was a smelly young man at the back.
Is that straight now, Frank?
That'll look fine from the Dolly Mount tram, son. If you want to go to the toilet, you better go now.
I don't need to go to the toilet.
Adamantine.
What did you say, Da?
Adamantine. Hard, like a diamond.
How does that look now, Frank?
Well, Christ and Leonard don't look particularly happy in the company they're in.
What was that word, Da?
The antiquated canine for the adamantine highway.
I'll get you a bit of cuddle as soon as I make the tea.
Good girl.
What does that mean, Da? You know what you just said?
You know the old saying, son. The owl dog for the hard road.
Mikey Trimble says nobody's any chance of winning that crossword, except Professor Hegarty, whose name is on it every week.
That's bloody funny.
Why is it funny?
Professor Haggerty is one of the judges, son. That's why his name is on it every week. Are you sure you don't want to go to the toilet?
I told you, Da. Sure, wouldn't I know if I did?
Well, something's rotten in the state of Denmark. Christ, that's a terrible smell. Maybe the drains has gone bad. Well, glory be to God, wouldn't that beat Banagher? 10 and 4pence a week for a house with bad drains. Remind me to write to the corporation about that, Kathleen.
About what, Frank?
About the drains, of course.
Oh.
No, better still. I'll do it myself. Might die of fever before them fellas arrive. Have you a bit of wire?
What would I be doing with a bit of wire?
I didn't ask you what you'd be doing with a bit of wire. It's just I need something to clear the drains before we die of typhoid.
And how do you know the drains need cleaning?
And what makes you think I couldn't smell a shore that needs cleaning?
There's a spade behind the back door.
A what?
A spade to dig the garden.
To dig up the land around the house? Do you want to get me arrested?
For what, may I ask?
For interfering with corporation property. Them fellas don't take too kindly to people digging holes in their ground, you know. I suppose I could apply for permission.
Permission to dig your own ground? Do you take me for a fool or what? Get out of it, man. Who do you think it is now that you're talking to? Here, sit down and take your dinner.
Glory be to God, Kathleen. Did you see that?
See what, Frank?
Some dirty-looking animal is after dumping a load of S-H-I-T-E in our yard.
Dump nothing. That's the finest manure I had delivered this morning. Bought it from a man who owns his own horses.
Shite? You bought shite? Merciful God Almighty, woman, is a going round the bend, yar.
We almost missed the smell when Seamus did get around to spreading it over the untilled ground. When the city lighting department put up street lamps, Kimmage lost something of its wild look. But it wasn't until each road bore its own name proudly on a little green plate that the place looked less like a jungle. Coming and going now would no longer be a raffle, and we might even have visitors find their way. Then one day, they put up a Catholic chapel, followed quickly by a pub, a block of shops, and finally a school. The school went up last because there's no profit in that. It was here in this building that I would henceforth be educated, even if it killed the owners of the awful concrete prison, who were known as the Irish Christian Brothers. Oh, I knew in my heart I was going to regret the day I'd forsaken the little red brick school at North William Street. And indeed, my fears were not unfounded. I soon learnt that the methods employed by these brothers were not to be compared with the kind, patient understanding of Sister Rita and Sister Monica. And though Brother McKeown, the superior, was a man of immense personal charm and intelligence, I soon discovered he was a rare exception to an order, the attitude of which to education was teaching through brute force. I even lost my interest in the singing lessons, because I couldn't see anything to sing about when you got a leather strap across your knuckles every time you missed a beat in the tune.
Today, there will be a collection for the black babies. And every boy who contributes to the missions will in a way be doing something to save a little African soul for God.
That notice is on the wall above the map of Ireland, and every Monday the brother accused me of spending my contribution on sweets. And still I wouldn't tell him that Ma didn't approve of black baby collections. Now there was a new notice which talked of Little Catholic Spain and selling raffle tickets to help the fight against communism. Well, I knew what Ma thought about that. So if I was going to avoid an extra hiding each week, I'd have to sell the tickets on the quiet, which I did. Until I heard what the real issues were in Spain, and then I felt very ashamed of the little green tickets I'd hawked from door to door.
Where are the forces of deliverance, me little Amadons? Tussa, o Behan, well to power?
Behan, are you deaf?
Ní Tara Barra.
No, brother.
The forces of deliverance, Behan.
The forces of deliverance, sir.
I was thinking that the word deliverance was well inside the vocabulary of a dirty little boy who steals whole lines from the dirty little Russian writer Tolstoy to fill out his dirty little compositions. Doesn't it make you wonder what sort of an evil parent raised a little thief like this? What sort of books his father reads, and what sort of books he's allowed read himself?
Sister Monica said it was a good thing to be able to use the words of great writers. She said it proved that we were well read, sir.
So, we have a nun's pet, have we? A little Nancy boy, is that it, Behan?
I'm not a Nancy boy, brother.
And what would you call a brat who's still tied to a nun's skirts at 10 years of age? Or is it the little baby here?
I'm nearly 11.
What's that, Jackie? Speak up.
I'm 10 in a few months, nearly 11.
Then you're old enough, like the rest of the class, to tell me where the army of deliverance against the Red Menace is now.
My brother says that Hitler's pigs have just invaded Austria.
Your brother says what about Herr Hitler?
My dad said it was only to be expected after the Pope had blessed Mussolini's extermination of the Abyssinian peasants.
Come out, Behan. Come out this instant!
And all the money you had to collect for Franco, I've given to Mr. Scanlon for the Spanish Republicans.
Come out, you little Jackie and guttersnipe! Come out this instant!
Brother Breton tried each and every one of his vicious leathers, and he took an eternity to make up his mind which was likely to inflict the most punishment. Near a picture of the infant Jesus, I read the words of our Lord, "Suffer the little children to come unto me." And for some reason I smiled.
In a minute, Jackie, we'll wipe that grin off your puss.
I thought of the boys in Artane's school who'd been crippled by these Christians, and of the boy who'd jumped out of the window and had never walk again out of terror. He lost the city accent he'd acquired since leaving the bog, and reverted to his native jargon, rolling vowels and spitting consonants.
And what have I here now by the ear at all? Is it a cunning fox a man could crack with a stick? A dinner idea that we should show sympathy for or what? No, no, no. This thing is lower than an animal deserving of the stick. Not as clever as the Amadon, yet with all the cunning of the sewer rat. This then is the Jackie, the guttersnipe, the cheat who steals the Pope's money and gives it to a Mr. Scanlon. This is the sort of blackguard that caused District Justice McCarthy to remark, nothing good comes out of Kimmage. Stick out your paw, Jackie.
How many, sir?
I'll tell you when I've finished, Jackie.
Oh, you big bog bastard!
What was that you said, you snivelling little wretch? By God, I'll teach you respect for your betters before I'm done with you. I learn you that there's no Mr. Scanlon with authority to collect in this school for the Catholic forces in Spain.
As he screamed hysterically, I felt I must be in the grip of a madman, and I prayed for someone to come to my aid. It was with relief that I saw Canon Hickey standing beside me. Well, Canon Hickey is a strict man, but I knew a true servant of God would be fair and just. Without stopping the punishment, Brother Breton explained how I had given the money of the school to aid the forces of Satan. And Canon Hickey's face twisted into a pained contempt as he told me, in between strokes, to beg forgiveness of every priest murdered and every nun raped by the Reds in Spain.
You will go home now and get that money whatever you like. Off with you now. And mark this, if that money isn't in my hand by tomorrow morning, you'll be expelled from the school and your family's name read from the pulpit on Sunday.
As I walked dazed through the empty corridors and out into the street, I thought of the savage Canon, and I tried to compare him with Spencer Tracy in Boys Town films. Big, handsome Father O'Flanagan who'd take off his dog collar to the toughest. There's no such thing as a bad boy. That's what an American priest had told an American judge. Well, maybe that's how it is in Hollywood. But I swore if I ever saw Canon Hickey in a like predicament, it's on the other side I'd be. However, reading Oliver Twist made me feel a little better. But when I thought of his treatment at the hands of Mr. Bumble, it was clear to me that Protestant Christians can be every bit as vicious as Catholic ones. I thought I could hear Rory putting his bike in the hall outside, so I gave both me eyes a little squeeze, the better to bruise them some more. Brother Breton had only been responsible for one, the other I'd picked up on the way home. But I'd every intention of giving the good Brother Breton credit for the two.
Hello, Domino. Hey, where's Ma?
This is the day for the Ioneer. She took Cameron with her.
Well, suppose I better fry a bit of sausage and pudding for us, what? Oh, Lord Almighty. You've been in a right scrap, haven't you? Look, haven't I always told you never to lead with your head?
I wasn't in the scrap, Rory. The brother did it.
The brother did that to you, did he? Well, the dirty, ignorant bastard. Come on, I'm taking you down there in the crossbar of me bike.
But, wow, if you go down there now, he'll make it worse for me tomorrow. He'll murder me altogether.
Well, we'll see about that, won't we?
That's him. The fellow with the red nose.
The God, it'll be red before I'm through with them. Come on. Hey, you.
Did you want something?
Did you do that?
Well, you see, Mr...
You dirty, ignorant bog bastard, you. Now, what way is that to treat a child that's not even 9 years of age?
But you don't understand...
All I know is that you wouldn't fight your match. Oh, Jesus, if I could just have one dig at you.
I must ask you to watch your language now.
And if I hear you laying your hands on a brother of mine again with a crucified Christ, I'll swing for you. And what are you doing, Sundown?
Rory, this place is the same as a chapel. The ground could only one of them Christian brothers ask for it.
Well, if it does, we'll bury the bastard in it. Come on, Sundown. The smell of cow shite in this place is turning me stomach.
We sat down to tea, and Rory, still fierce with rage, was the biggest and the best brother in the world.
What in the name of our blessed mother was that?
I don't know. Sounds like somebody knocking for attention.
Maybe I'd better see if there's anything wrong. Who lives there?
Search me.
There's a woman and a man. I think they're Mammy and Daddy, and the woman is terrible fat.
If your daddy comes in, tell him there's a fry there from over the pot. Tell him I've just gone next door. I won't be long.
Right.
When Dad heard what had happened to me, he was fit to be tied. He stormed about the Christian Brothers, cursed their collections for Franco, and swore that he was going to go and see his friend, the police superintendent, who'd been in prison with him. After I had repeated the story in detail, about 14 times, I saw Rory making signs behind Dad's back that maybe I should go to bed.
Come on.
Well, Dad, I better be getting upstairs.
Now, hold your horses. I want to get this name right. Don't want to kill the wrong man. Breton, isn't that it? That's a funny name. Knew a fella by that name in Kinmailham jail. Swore he'd become an informer. Very disappointed when he died of hunger strike.
Well, off you go, Sundown. Time you're in the sack.
You off to bed, love?
Wait, Mom.
Night, son. Well, I'm not the better of that. Put the kettle on, Ro.
What are you not the better of, kits?
Young woman next door. Slip of a girl. Child, in fact. She's nearly gone off full time. Her man's away working in England. And there's neither friend nor relation to offer her help or sympathy.
Man should be with his wife at a time like that.
Ah, speak sense, Frank. How could the man be there if he's away earning his living? But how is it there wouldn't be a neighbour to call on? God knows I always thought Russell Street a dreadful place. But a body wouldn't die there for want of a helping hand.
Is the poor child dead then?
No. But for all the attention the visiting nurse gave to her, she might as well be. I had to chase off down Sundrive Road and telephone for the ambulance. I must have waited ages to get through.
I'm sure the doctor only lives a few doors down from the telephone box. And besides, I could have run down on me bike.
Things like that are not for young men, son. Besides, the doctor wouldn't put his foot out unless the woman had 7 and 6pence or a red card.
Doctors differ and patients.
You'd be better off in bed, Frank. Off it you now. How did you manage to get so drunk in the middle of the week?
With the greatest of ease and inestimable pleasure. Good night, sweet Prince. And you, fair flower, rest easy until thou art called.
He was telling Dominic how he's going to murder every brother in the school. Says he's going to take a day off work.
Oh, the poor child. I hope he's in the habit of waiting. That man would say mass if he had enough drink taken.
All the night before, I hadn't been able to sleep a wink. And though Seamus told me nothing had happened, Dad was drunk and he'd have forgotten everything before morning. Still, I said a prayer for him. I don't say the prayers you learn at school. I have my own brand. And they go, God bless everybody. Sean and Brendan and all, right down through me relations. Well, it's easier than counting sheep, because one sheep is inclined to look very much like another. Anyway, here I was, up first, and I had Dad's shaving water all ready. So I was a little surprised when he came down, not with his Sunday suit on, but still in his working clothes.
You're up at the lark, John L. Did the bees wake you?
Have you shaved more already, Dad?
Me what?
You shaved more for the brother, you know.
Well, thank you, brother. But this isn't Sunday, you know. Only one of them in the week. Worst luck. Still, put an egg in it. I haven't much time and your mother's not feeling too well.
My God, he was serious. Put an egg in it, says he. Could anyone believe anybody anymore?
Forget about the egg, son. I'm in a hurry.
Are you forgetting anything?
No, I don't think so. Me meat and bread in a little packet. Tea and sugar in another. Milk in me baby power bottle. Me brushes. No, I don't think I'm forgetting anything. You are right to remind me.
I knew you'd remember. I told John that you...
Here, catch. Oh, you want to do better than that if you're going to play for Dublin in the All-Ireland.
My God. A smile and he was gone whistling down the road. The old bastard hadn't remembered a thing about last night. On his own in Kimmage, Frank had to find 10 shillings and 4pence each week for the corporation rent collector. That was 1/6 of his total wages if he was working. And if there was a falling off in work, well, he was a lot less well off than he had been in Russell Street. There was no Christine English to fall back on now. no one to owe rent to. Oh, true, the good nuns were handing out what they used to call penny dinners, but you had to have at least 2 halfpence to get one of them. In 1938, his entire share of employment came to less than 6 months, which was a good half the year more than in many of the registered working population of the Green Isle. In that year also, the National Unemployed Workers' Marches were in full swing, carrying black coffins through the streets and lying down in front of the traffic. Big Jim Larkin, who in 1913 had fought the employers, was once again in the forefront of a great struggle for a new deal. They'd not be on their own, he told the idle men, for back to back would be the entire weight of organised trade unionism. Like Jesus Christ, Larkin spoke on platforms all over the country. And Jesus Christ himself would have been hard set to compete with the Liverpool docker for the affections of the Irish people. Well, De Valera didn't give in to the mighty wave of popular protest all at once. No, first there was the imprisonments and the baton charges. And when repression failed, the government introduced the most extraordinary relief measures. You dig a hole, and Jack and Tommy'll fill it in. Young men were told to go and cut peat on the bogs of Ireland at niggardly wages or have even their meagre dole suspended. Trade unionism among the turf workers was banned, and their living conditions were deplorable.
Telling Dublin men to go on foot turf. Jesus, that's a bloody good one. Will you sit still, you little bastard?
Old Mackin frightened the life out of me every time I went to have me hair cut. Everything depended on his state of mind, and his state of mind depended on whatever news came over the wireless, or on what one of the customers read from the pile of papers around the shop.
If he wants people to go and cut turf, he should send himself in his cabinet, because if anyone has the accent for the bog, it's De Valera in his government.
Because you could be right there, Charlie. According to Miles and Goppeline, he'll solve the economic situation if he can repeat the bogs.
Oh, I wouldn't like to take a chance in telling him jokes like that. De Valera thinks there's nothing funny in his sense of humour. The bastard might repeat the bogs. Sure, look at Kimmage. What's this but a bog? He's repeating things like this all over Dublin.
You're going to be long there, Charlie. The boozer's open. I want Nick Flood to cash a small cheque for me.
Check, Jason. We're coming up in the world, eh, Frank?
Ah, it's only for a couple of quid. I did a board for Jack Matches, the bookie, this morning.
Yeah, well, if you hold on till I'm finished, I'll cash it for you myself, and then we can have a pint together. Yeah. If you don't stop fidgeting, young fella, I'll give you a haircut that'll make the image of your jaw.
All the barbers hate my head of skin, Charlie.
Too for you, Frank. Ah, but then grass never grew in a busy street. Hey, did you see Sean Scanlon's head after that unemployment march the other day? Jesus, the police near danced on it.
Devil have his work cut out if Larkin brings the men out in the streets.
Ah, the long fella has nothing to fear. Sure, who is there to protect him now? Nobody. Oh, Spain did an awful lot of damage.
Ireland lost a good few men there, all right.
Good few men? God's sake. Sure, it took the whole leadership of the Republican movement. Sure, Frank Ryan is in jail there. And young McGregor. There's a lad for you.
Aye, the kibosh is on the leadership now, right enough.
And Sean Russell thinks that it's all right to send young men and old women on a bombing campaign in England. Jesus, if brains and sincerity only went hand in hand, we'd be the freest nation on the face of the earth.
I always had a soft spot for Russell.
So would I. Well, when himself and Sean McCaughey thinks that freeing Ireland means the extermination of the English, while Dev rides roughshod at home, that's going to the fair altogether.
Are you doing nothing in the movement at all now, Charlie?
Ah, what movement? Ah, if only the days of a Congress were here. Be God, they wouldn't have battened unemployed men at 33. We'd have shot the arses off them.
It's a long way to the boozer, Charlie.
That's another thing I have against Kimmage. If he'd only had the sense to be over near the Five Lamps now, wouldn't be at all that bad. You can't even get Radio Eden properly up here. It's all the open spaces. Nothing to break the wind but 5-bar gates.
The British ambassador in Berlin handed the German government a final note stating that unless we heard from them by 11 o'clock, that they were prepared at once to withdraw their troops from Poland, a state of war would exist between us. I have to tell you now that no such undertaking has been received, and that consequently this country is at war with Germany.
I knew it. All set to be first holiday in the Isle of Man for years, and this had to happen. They couldn't have waited a bloody fortnight.
We got the borders out at the park now, Charlie.
Is there a war on, though?
Yes, there is. Go home now before you're conscripted. You got the haircut for it anyway.
I never knew what old Redden meant when she said radio never gave bad news. Time to change its mind.
Come on for that point, Frank, before something serious happens.
It's the unfortunate English I feel sorry for.
So do I, Frank, so do I. After all, it's nothing new to us. Us, who's been at war for the best part of 800 years.
Oh, true for you, Charlie. True for you.
So, Ireland became an island in more senses than one. For to add to the water, we were now surrounded by war. Conditions improved at home because England needed armaments workers. Everyone was either over the water or waiting on the fair, and for those at home, there was plenty to do. Even Giggles Devine got a job, where he had a grand big shovel to lean on. And Larry Clancy told us that the last words he ever spoke, before the bomb dropped, was, Jesus Christ, that was my ace.
Tell me, Ma, when I go home, the boys won't leave the girls alone. They pull me hair and toss me comb, but that's all right till I go home.
She is handsome, she is pretty, she is the belle of Dublin City. She has lovers, 1, 2, 3. Pray now tell me.
Of Mrs. Kathleen Behan, mother of Brendan Behan, will take place on Monday. Mrs. Behan died in Dublin last night, aged 94. Her remains will be brought tomorrow from Raheny to Clougher Road Church in Crumlin, arriving at 5 o'clock. She'll be buried in Dean's Grange Cemetery alongside her second husband, Stephen, after 10 o'clock Mass on Monday morning. Michael Fisher looks back at one of Dublin's most colourful characters.
Kathleen Behan had 10 children. When her most famous one, Brendan, was 6, his teacher told her she was rearing a genius. Kathleen had been worried because some of the neighbours in Russell Street had complained that he was bold. Born in Dublin in 1889, her parents had a small grocer's shop in the city centre. Married in 1916, her first husband died 2 years later, after Kathleen had given birth to 2 sons. One of them, Rory Furlong, was among those who appeared with her on The Late Late Show 3 years ago. Then, 92, she had just cut her first disc, an LP of her songs called When All the World Was Young. Apart from her own musical talent, Kathleen's brother, Peadar Carney, wrote the national anthem, Ár na Bhíon. A Republican and a strong Catholic, Mrs. Behan was once called a communist by her neighbours. She had prosecuted a butcher in 1947 for selling meat above the fixed price.
When all the world is young, lad, and all the trees are green, every goose is a swan, lad, and every lass a queen. You get upon your big white horse and gaily ride away, for youth must have its fling, lad, and every dog his day. I never stop singing, and I hope when I'm dying I'll be singing.